What is this? Andromeda? What is this? I just don't like Mass Effect 1's resource system. If they fixed and changed that, I would just start at Mass Effect 2. I just don't like Mass Effect 1's resource system. It sucks. Huh, what is this? That sucks. Can I just. You know what? Alright, here's what we're gonna do. Um. Fuck it. Let's just go. I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm not gonna play one. I'm just gonna play 2 and 3, and I will. I just don't like one. One's so. Oh, really? That's all. It's interesting. Jesus. Oh my god. What the fuck, dude? What? What the fuck is going on in this country right now? Oh. Oh, see that.
Sup, you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Hit that like button to help spread some common sense news coverage, and let's just jump into it. Obviously, the first thing that we're going to talk about today is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation trial is officially over. The verdict came in today. Jury selection started April 11th, closing arguments May 27th, and today the jury decided.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
With the jury finding that to be the case with all three of Depp's claims against Heard. As far as Amber Heard, she lost two of her claims and won one. And so with all of that, the jury awarded Depp $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages, but per Virginia statute, Depp's punitive damages are capped at $350,000. And then, as far as Heard, she was awarded a total of $2 million. And as you'd expect, there's been a massive reaction online. Among those happy with the verdict, you had people saying, "This is so heartwarming. We love you, Johnny. Finally, your name is cleared." Male victims of domestic violence gained a voice today. May this be a watershed moment in our understanding of abuse and its consequences. Abuse has no gender, does not care how rich or poor you are. No matter who you are, your story matters. And well, Amber, you told him to tell the world. He did. We heard him. So did the jury. And among those against the verdict, you had people saying, literally nothing about this trial has been surprising, from the treatment of the accuser to the eventual verdict. She certainly did face our culture's wrath. Amber Heard had more evidence than 99.999% of domestic abuse survivors have to support her claims of abuse, and a jury still found her guilty of defamation. Meanwhile, the person she accused could not be bothered to even show up to court. We hate women so much in this country. And like in the trial at large, the format of this verdict reading will shape how people will remember it. Johnny Depp's sweeping victory being read first will certainly completely overshadow the fact that Amber Heard also made a successful claim of defamation against Depp. We've also gotten responses from both parties here, with Heard putting out a statement saying she is disappointed her evidence was not enough, but adding, "I'm even more disappointed with what this verdict means for other women. It is a setback. It sets back the clock to a time when a woman who spoke up and spoke out could be publicly shamed and humiliated." With then Depp, on the other hand, saying, "The goal of bringing this case was to reveal the truth regardless of the outcome. Speaking the truth was something that I owed to my children and to all those who have remained steadfast in their support of me. I feel at peace knowing I have finally accomplished that. But now with all of that said, right, the verdict coming in, reactions rolling through, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree with the verdict? Why not? Any and all thoughts you have, I'd love to hear from you in those comments down below. And then, with the rise of remote work, there are people that love it, there are people that hate it, and among that latter group, you have Elon Musk. Because emails have now leaked that appear to show Elon Musk threatening to fire Tesla executives unless they show up to the main office in person full time. With him saying anyone who wishes to do remote work must be in the office for a minimum, and I mean minimum, of 40 hours per week or depart Tesla. This is less than we ask of factory workers. And adding, if there are particularly exceptional contributors for whom this is impossible, I will review and approve those exceptions directly. While this was a leaked email, Musk is not private about this opinion. Or when someone asked him on Twitter any additional comment to people who think coming into work is an antiquated concept, he replied they should pretend to work somewhere else. This isn't exactly a new opinion for Musk. He tweeted last month, all the COVID stay-at-home stuff has tricked people into thinking that you don't actually need to work hard. Rude awakening inbound. Though, there would be a fair share of people who would disagree with that. Or for example, you had 3 economists telling Insider that remote work during the pandemic did not damage worker productivity, with evidence even suggesting that productivity has in fact increased as people went remote, with the belief being it's because remote workers spend less time commuting and more time sleeping and being with their families, which makes them happier and more productive. Though, the one caveat there is that people with children at home might see a dip in productivity. But overall, seems very positive, which is why other big tech companies like Amazon, Apple, Google, and Facebook still allow at least some remote work, depending on the employee's position and location. You've also had Musk in the past ripping into workers trying not to come into the office in person last month by comparing them to Chinese workers whom he said don't even leave the factory and keep going until 3 in the morning. Also, just so everyone understands, he is not being hyperbolic there. But the same day that he said that, Fortune published this article detailing how Tesla workers in Shanghai work 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, even sleeping on the factory floor. And in the leaked emails, it appears that Musk tries to get ahead of people saying, other companies don't do this. With Musk writing, there are of course companies that don't require this, but when was the last time they shipped a great new product? And personally, I agree with Elon Musk. So I keep my writers, researchers, and editors locked in cages right next to the studio. And before all you woke leftists get all up in arms, I water and feed them on a semi-regular basis. Now, with this story, I would of course love to know your thoughts on work from home. Have you done it? Do you love it? Are you glad about the switch? Has there not been a switch? Insert questions here. I personally love it, but I also understand that, not everyone's job's like mine. Like almost pretty much everyone at my company can be work from home. Also of the notion of like people faking working from home. Like I know that is a thing for some people, but I think a lot of jobs, there's an open secret of like so much of the day is just empty hours. They have an 8-hour day. Maybe the amount of work that they actually have to do is like 3 to 5 hours. It just, that's just the way some jobs are. And personally, I'm of the mindset of as long as you accomplish the thing that we were trying to accomplish, perfect. And while some of you let me know your thoughts there, I do have to say, this isn't even my favorite Elon Musk story. My favorite Elon Musk story this week is that he randomly got into a fight with a video game satire website. And, let's just walk through it. Elon Musk puts out a tweet that he has now deleted. The company Hard Drive responds, hey, I'll give you a horse if you stop cropping our name off our articles. To which Elon Musk replies, well, if you make something that looks like a meme and someone not me crops off your name, so it goes. Also, this is only a 6 out of 10 meme, so maybe step down from that high horse. The selfless art of anonymous meme creators is something to be admired. To which Hard Drive responds, okay, well let me know what you think about this one. Linking him to an article titled, Elon Musk admits he wants to travel to Mars because no one hates him there yet. Elon responds, less funny than SNL on a bad day. This could make a drunk person sober. Try harder. To which Hard Drive responds, well, you're the expert on SNL's bad days. With Elon going on to write, the reason you're not that funny is because you're woke. Humor relies on an intuitive and often awkward truth being recognized by the audience, but wokeism is a lie, which is why nobody laughs. Also, it should be noted regarding the nobody laughs part, the entire time Elon Musk is being ratioed by Hard Drive. With him then posting the article Elon Musk offers to validate he stepped on. And then finally, the article Hard Drive apologizes to Elon Musk for dunking on him too hard. With him going on to detail the various controversies Musk has been involved in over the last few years and going on to write, we hope that Mr. Musk will accept our sincerest apologies. We should have known that it was unwise to go toe-to-toe with a billionaire who's famous for his ability to deliver epic clapbacks to his critics, like when Mr. Musk called a diver who rescued children from a flooded cave a pedophile. And adding, from now on, we vow to put aside petty quarrels and use our platform to highlight issues that really matter, like the reportedly nightmarish conditions in Tesla factories, which have been likened to modern-day sweatshops. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, congratulations to Hard Drive for their future acquisition by Elon Musk. But from that, I want to take a second to thank the fantastic sponsor of today's show, Squarespace. I've been partnering with Squarespace for years now, and I have to say, if you're getting your business off the ground or creating a place to share your homemade goods, new favorite hobby, current obsession, or even a personal blog to get all those thoughts out of your head no matter what you're doing, Squarespace is there to help. It's all so easy. There's There's nothing to install, patch, or upgrade ever. And creating a beautiful website with Squarespace's all-in platform has never been so simple. It's extremely intuitive and easy to use. Plus, with their mobile-optimized sites, your content automatically adjusts, so your content looks great on any device. Plus, with Squarespace, you get access to all their marketing tools and analytics and their award-winning customer care team via email or live chat 24/7. So, if you want to check it out, see why so many others have loved it, see if it is right for you, go ahead and start your free trial today over at squarespace.com/Phil. And when you realize you love it, make sure you enter in offer code Phil to get 10% off your first purchase. And then, in major tech/social media news, we have to talk about the surprising decision from the Supreme Court to block a Texas law. So the law in question aimed to prohibit social media companies from removing posts based on political viewpoint while the matter plays out in lower courts. It's a law that's similar to another in Florida, and it would apply to only social media platforms with more than 50 million active monthly users like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, meaning that it would only regulate the top sites, but it doesn't seem to impact the smaller conservative platforms like Getter and Trump's Truth Social. Now, Republican supporters of the measure, which was initiated after Trump was banned from some platforms following the insurrection, say that it was an effort to fight against what they claim is an attempt by Silicon Valley to censor conservatives. And back in December, a federal judge in Austin issued a preliminary injunction blocking the law on the grounds that it violated social media companies' First Amendment right to moderate content on their sites. But then that law was allowed to go into effect after a split panel of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals stayed that injunction without providing any legal reasoning or ruling on the merits of the appeal in a move that shocked the tech industry. After that, two trade groups representing Google and Facebook and other tech giants filed an emergency request asking the Supreme Court to block the law while they went through the appeals process, calling it an unprecedented assault on the editorial discretion of private websites that would fundamentally transform their business models and services, and claiming that it would compel platforms to disseminate all sorts of objectionable viewpoints, such as Russia's propaganda claiming that its invasion of Ukraine is justified, ISIS propaganda claiming that extremism is warranted, neo-Nazi or KKK screeds denying or supporting the Holocaust, and encouraging children to engage in risky or unhealthy behavior like eating disorders. Like I said, this was an unusual decision because it was a 5-4 decision. The High Court agreeing with tech companies and blocking the law for now. And the reason this was an unusual decision is you didn't just have conservatives joining the liberals on the court, because in addition to the court's 3 most conservative justices saying, hey, let's let the law stand, liberal Justice Elena Kagan also said that, though she did not join the dissent, nor did she provide reasoning of her own decision. Now, as is typical with emergency applications, the court's ruling was unsigned and gave no explanation, but in the dissenting opinion, Justice Samuel Alito wrote that the issues at hand in the Texas case were so unique that they needed to be considered by the court at some point in the future, with him also expressing skepticism over the tech companies' argument that they are allowed editorial discretion similar to that given to newspapers and more traditional publishers under the First Amendment. But before you cheer or boo too soon, understand this is by no means the end of the legal battle here, with experts saying that the split decision and Alito's remarks signal that the court will likely want to make a decision on the merits of this kind of case, and they will almost certainly have the opportunity to do so soon. Where the Texas case is still pending in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and Florida's very similar law regulating tech companies is also undergoing litigation. While the Fifth Circuit panel appears inclined to rule in favor of the Texas law, the SCOTUS decision comes less than 2 weeks after the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit ruled unanimously that most of Florida's law violated the First Amendment. So, if the Fifth Circuit panel upholds Texas's law, it would put the two courts in direct contradiction, then likely leaving the matter to be resolved by the Supreme Court. But that's where we are. We're going to have to wait to see what happens next. And then let's talk about the drug problem, though I need to be more specific, the illegal drug problem, because there is a legal drug problem. But, one of the questions when it comes to illegal drugs is having restrictive laws around that. Is it helpful? Does it have no impact? Or does it actually make the situation worse? And in the next little bit, we're going to be able to see way more data on this because British Columbia just got permission from the Canadian government to run a 3-year test into decriminalizing most hard drugs. We're talking about things that, yes, there is a range, right? You have MDMA, but also cocaine, opioids, heroin, meth. And so what this means is that starting January 31st next year, users found with small amounts of drugs, meaning 2.5 grams or less, won't be arrested or face charges. Instead, they'll be pointed to resources about how to get treatment. But also, to be clear, that does not mean this gives a green light for people to openly sell and distribute drugs. Also, regarding that 2.5 gram limit, even for those that are for decriminalization, they have criticized that as extremely low. And it's actually way less than the already low 4.5 grams that British Columbia had asked for. And as far as the why are they doing this, the timing is very notable. It comes as the country, and this province in particular, has faced a record number of overdose deaths, with officials like Canadian Health Minister Dr. Theresa Tam having pointed out that the fear of criminal charges possibly discourages people from seeking help. Writing stigma and fear of criminalization cause some people to hide their drug use alone, or use in other ways that increase the risk of harm, saying substance use is a health issue, not a criminal one. So without needing to fear charges, the hope is that experiencing an overdose or those witnessing one will actually get help. Notably, this decision isn't seen as a complete solution to the ongoing crisis, and there are some who think that it actually doesn't go far enough, and that's because, in part, many overdoses overdoses now are caused by people using substances without really knowing what's in them. So the normal dose may end up being way too much, or it may be laced with other substances like fentanyl. That's why there have also been calls for the government to open up the market even more and just regulate it, with Dana Larson, a drug policy reform activist, saying, I think we need stores where you can go in and find legal heroin, legal cocaine, and legal ecstasy and stuff like that for adults. The real solution to this problem is to treat it like alcohol and tobacco. Though obviously, opinions range wildly when you jump from decriminalization to legalization. But whatever your opinion, the data from this 3-year test, alongside similar policies from a few jurisdictions around the world, it's going to be vital. Right? The big test of, is it viable to decriminalize even the hard stuff? Right? I mean, we're seeing examples all over, including in the States, where back in 2020, Oregon decriminalized many drugs, making possession a Class E violation with just a $100 fine that can be waived if a person just calls a hotline. And Portugal decriminalizing hard drugs way back in 2001 with somewhat mixed results. But while we wait to see how this plays out, I do want to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts regarding decriminalizing and/or legalizing harder drugs? I'm personally at least for the decriminalization of use or low-level possession. I just don't think that incarceration makes sense unless you're a private prison and you're like, oh, yay, profit. I very much agree that use is a health problem, not a criminal problem. But as far as decriminalizing it for like people that are selling it, actively pushing it into communities, I don't know about that. And I don't know about the legalization, because you're talking about some really fucking crazy drugs with heroin and meth. But yeah, let me know what you're thinking. That is ultimately where that story and today's show ends. Thanks for watching. I love you faces. If you want more news, click or tap right there, or in those links in the description. My name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You can't even get us a single barrel.
Who said anything about barrels? I'm talking about an ocean of this stuff.
Hey guys, it's Andrew again. This week, we're diving into one of my personal favorites, Breaking Bad. This episode of Breaking Bad hits like a freight train. It's 48 minutes of rich character development, complex storytelling, and nail-biting tension. Much like a freight train, this episode links together cars full of deceit, betrayal, intimidation, desperation, greed, action, and tragedy, and sends our characters on a one-way trip down an irreversible track. This is Dead Friend, the 5th episode in the Breaking Bad's final season. Some argue that this episode is where Breaking Bad jumps the shark and leaves plausibility behind, stating that the train heist was just a little too unbelievable, and they aren't necessarily wrong. The train heist seems like an incredibly difficult task for these characters, who have no experience with train robberies, to pull off. However, while the episode centers around this methamphetamine heist, it has almost nothing to do with the train robbery. This is an episode about moral and ethical quandaries, and how our characters react to these quandaries under extreme circumstances. In fact, the actual train heist is less of a plot point and more of an environmental element. It's a storm that our characters have to weather and survive, no matter the cost. And within that storm, we learn what our characters are made of when we subject them to these extreme circumstances. It is a masterclass on how appropriate pacing can have major impact on the overall outcome of one single episode. And the episode begins with a cold open on a dirt bike cruising through the sand dunes of New Mexico. We see that the operator of the vehicle is a child, and watch him pick up and capture a tarantula, something that the best episodes of Breaking Bad do very well. It shows something seemingly innocuous and almost quizzical at the beginning of the episode. We've seen it with the pink teddy bear seen throughout season 2, which we find out was from the plane crash inadvertently caused by Walter White. By this point in the show, we know that every scene and every frame in Breaking Bad is completely intentional. We get this image of a child riding a dirt bike and collecting a giant spider, but we don't get the context. It's mysterious, it's intriguing, and it's subtle. So subtle that we almost forget about it entirely as the episode progresses. From the beginning of this episode, we see that our main characters are all in dire straits. Lydia's discovery of the tracking device on a barrel of methylamine has pushed Mike, Jesse, and Walter to an extreme point of desperation. The episode starts out with really high stakes, which is part of what makes it so perfect. Literally everything is on the line as Walter White manipulates his way into Hank's office to plant monitoring devices. This is also a really interesting scene in the sense that while Walter is telling Hank about his problems, he's essentially telling the truth, but under false pretenses. Every single thing that comes out of Walter's mouth in this scene is true. His tears are real. He truly is mourning the loss of love in his marriage. Granted, it's his own fault, but he is mourning nonetheless. Despite the level of honesty and emotional vulnerability displayed by Walter in this scene, he still uses it to deceive his brother-in-law to further his own agenda. This is empathetic sociopathy, and you'd think something like that would be impossible to capture in a performance. The next scene is in stark contrast to the previous one, and it's a good example of how the episode uses color to play with our emotions. The warm reds and earth tones of Hank's office makes us feel safe and secure, as if nobody can be harmed here. As we transition to the basement of the warehouse, that warmth and security disappears and is replaced with cold blues and the bleak grayness of concrete. It looks heartless and empty. We immediately connect visually to a sense of danger. Someone could die. From the beginning of this scene, we understand that Lydia's life is on the line. As viewers, we begin to scrutinize every decision Lydia makes because we know that she could die at any minute. An audience that is scrutinizing a character's decision on that level is an engaged audience. We become even more engaged as our main characters struggle with the first major moral quandary and whether or not to in fact shoot Lydia in the head. The stakes are what grip us and put us on the edge of our seat. But with the addition of a moral dilemma, we are drawn in and placed in these characters' shoes as they weigh out the pros and cons of ending someone's life. In an act of self-preservation and desperation, Lydia uses a window of opportunity to clue Walter, Mike, and Jesse onto a gigantic tanker filled with a massive amount of methylamine headed towards them by train. And by the time they make the decision to go through with the heist, we've spent almost half the episode getting to the primary objective. Breaking Bad takes its time. The show does not move on until we understand completely what is on the line, how it affects our characters, and what it means to succeed or fail at it. Now that the show has done the heavy lifting of presenting the extremely high stakes, we get to see the elaborate setup of how the heist is going to go down. The writers do a great job of showing us the pieces and how they work, without beating us over the head with foreshadowing. It's not only efficient and concise, it also fills us with anticipation now that we have an understanding of how the heist is going to unfold. The next scene is one of the most important scenes in the entire series. After banishing his son to go stay with Hank and Marie, Walter and Skyler sit down for a little heart-to-heart. In this conversation, Skyler makes something very clear with the line of dialogue,
"I'm not your wife. I'm your hostage."
It's here where we realize that Walter White's marriage, his family, the thing that has been driving him the entirety of the series, has reached the point of no return. It's also in this moment where Walter White accepts the fact that he has destroyed his own family. There's only 15 minutes left, and we still have a train to heist. What makes this climax so great is the way in which it is paced. A satisfying climax is earned, and pacing is the way to earn it. Almost an entire minute of footage is spent just showing the train in motion. The music composition here helps set the tempo, as the chaos of the train's elaborate machinery speeds over the heads of our main characters. It's a symphony of tension as our hearts are pounding to the beat of the drums. A brief reprieve as the train halts, and boom, the heist is on. There's not even a whole lot going on here as far as heists go. It's just three guys pumping liquids while Bill Burr distracts the crew. So why is it so exciting? All the elements of fantastic storytelling are present here. The music is perfect for a sequence like this. The sound of the whirring and the visual counter of how many gallons of methylamine also add to what makes this feel exciting. Our characters are speaking with intensity. The editing is on point and really highlights how the heist is unfolding. Cutting between sweating faces, frantic movements, and the roar of the generator engine, the filling of the hoses. It all paints a very clear picture of what exactly is happening. There's even a bit of humor in this sequence with Bill Burr and the way he keeps extending his con on the train conductors. Mike Ehrmantraut's narration via walkie-talkie here also raises the stakes, to the point of it almost being a little too nail on the head. It all comes down to the very last second. The music swells, Jesse lets the train pass over him, Todd leaps to safety, and the group rejoices. Yes, bitch! Everything seems fine until that kid on the dirt bike you forgot about shows up. Without hesitation, Todd murders an innocent child, and everyone here is complicit. Any shred of dignity these characters had is gone in an instant. It's a catastrophic tragedy that occurs in the last 60 seconds, and the credits roll over the tarantula in the glass jar. Dead Freight is an episode of Breaking Bad that utilizes almost every facet of powerful storytelling and weaves them together in a way that constantly bats our emotions back and forth. We feel sorry for Walt. We feel concerned for his family. We feel fear for Lydia, we feel empathy for Skylar, and we feel pain and anger over the tragic and senseless death of a child. There's also a heist involved. By the time the episode is over, we really feel like we've experienced something exciting and terrible. When we tell stories, we want to have these high stakes, but it isn't enough to just create those stakes. We need to earn the right to have them by establishing pace and action. When this is done poorly, it's at the very least somewhat exciting, but when it's done well, it takes us from simply watching a show to actively experiencing one. Well, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments what other topics you'd like for me to cover. And if you're a fan of Nerdstalgic, why not subscribe and hit the bells?
Here's you, here's Matt, there's you! You can't even get... I have this coming. What? I have it coming. I deserve this.
You snap out of it. All right, first off, everything you did for your family. Right?
This isn't a unique take by any stretch, but for me, Breaking Bad is one of those cases of a story that constantly gets better as it progresses. It is the quintessential example of a show that continuously uses the foundations it sets in interesting and emotional ways, one that has a clear overall plan from the start and a knack for knowing where emphasis should be placed and how elements need to develop as things go on, which all makes it so that it works as a dramatic crescendo of a narrative that just gets better with time and payoff. Yet, although Season 1 is undoubtedly the weakest for me, Breaking Bad is still good from the start. It's great from the start, actually, and immediately begins building upon itself in a truly impressive way. But the episode that turned my impressions of it from "this could be something special" into "this is already something special" was Episode 9 of Season 2, entitled 4 Days Out. After taking a test to determine how his treatment has progressed, Walt sneaks a glance at a scary-looking mass on a scan of his lungs, and combining that with the nasty recent spell of coughing he's been experiencing, Walter figures that the news regarding his cancer is not good, to say the least. He figures that he doesn't have much time left to live, and as a result, he decides to ramp up the meth-making operation so that he'll procure enough money to set his family up for a bright future, even if he dies earlier than originally expected. So to do this, he lies to Skyler and says that he's visiting his mother, and lies to Jesse by telling him that they need to cook as much as possible as soon as possible because their supply of methylamine is going bad. This sets him and Jesse up for 4 days of cooking, after which there will hopefully be enough production to satisfy Walter's goals. And what ensues here is a road trip into the vast nothingness of the New Mexico desert to make as much blue as possible, and everything seems to stop to take a step back and explore this situation. There are no highly dramatic or pulsating sequences, no explosions or gunfights. It's just a road trip. One that doesn't go as planned. This one is almost like a bottle episode, which Breaking Bad is known to do from time to time. One that offers us a look into the relationship and dynamics between these two characters at this point in time, providing a snapshot of sorts. And the image we get from this is actually quite lovely, because it can be argued that this period of time is where the relationship between Jesse and Walter is at its healthiest and most vibrant. They tend to annoy each other, quite a lot in fact, but here is where enough time had passed such that they had grown to also care for one another quite a bit. They're comfortable with each other, and there's a mutual respect. I mean, hell, Walter even feels genuinely sorry for assuming that Jesse's girlfriend would be a stripper, and expresses that he's impressed at Jesse's initiative in raising their prices. There's a camaraderie here, especially during the montage, where special attention is paid to showing how the two work together so well, and even to let us see Walter eating Jesse's Funyuns that he had seemingly been disgusted with earlier, only to throw them away to show that he is indeed still disgusted with them. But you get my point. They're genuine partners. One of the most beautiful moments in the entire series for me is when Walt surrenders to his hype and excitement to give Jesse a high five upon learning how much money they'd earn from this cook. And another is when Jesse gives his word that Walt's family will get their share no matter what happens, a sentiment that Walt absolutely believes and appreciates. Both moments occur in this episode, and it all really illustrates the bond these two have. And it was before Walt did such terrible things to negatively impact Jesse's life, before Jesse started seriously blaming Walt for his misfortune. And although he did lie to bring Jesse out here, this was also before Walt started applying some heavy, seriously immoral manipulation tactics to use Jesse in various ways. Though I personally maintain that he never stopped caring for him on some level. The time these two spent making meth here is kind of comparable to the perfect moment to die that Walter describes in his drug-addled state during Season 3's Fly, except here is essentially the most wholesome part of their relationship, after which the only place to really go was down. And partly as a result of this, 4 Days Out is a microcosm of a lot of what we've come to expect from Breaking Bad. The comedy, the fun moments, the stylish montage showing off the cook and locales, the beautiful direction, and eventually, the way it all inevitably gives in to darkness. The generator gives way, and due to Jesse's first mistake, the battery completely drains. Due to Jesse's second mistake, the remainder of their drinking water goes to waste, conflict and blame ensue, and panic slowly begins to set in just as much as the harsh desert cold. As what seems like a final resort, Jesse uses Walter's phone to call Skinny Pete to pick the two up, only to find out hours later that he went the wrong way before the phone dies, right on time. Walter's cough begins acting up, and Jesse realizes that he lied about the methylamine. They attempt to trickle charge the battery, and that doesn't work, and soon Walter scarily expels some blood. Things just keep piling on, going from bad to worse, and the two end up at their wits' end, devastated and full of desperation. It's a genuine roller coaster of ascents and descents, of hope rearing itself and being extinguished just as quickly, and it's a brilliant way of displaying how such a situation can shine a light on people, as Walt ultimately finds himself giving up and almost accepting the possibility of dying out here, and as Jesse decides that he's not having any of it and realizes that he has so much to live for at this point, leading to one last ascent where they are finally able to get the RV running through a makeshift battery. They then get the hell out of there, and the two are able to reconcile and reiterate their trust for one another in a beautifully genuine moment to once again illustrate this very real and very powerful connection they have.
I know I can trust you to,
But while all of that is absolutely wonderful, none of it really hits upon why 4 Days Out helped Breaking Bad past that threshold for me. And I think the real reason that this episode sticks out in my mind is for the last few minutes, which culminate in a very raw and complex scene. The moment of truth arrives, and the entire family waits with bated breath to hear about Walter's test results. And contrary to what Walt expects, those results end up being absolutely wonderful. He is in remission, and his tumor has shrunk by 80%, and the nasty spot he saw from the scan was actually just tissue inflammation, with the coughing and blood being byproducts that, while not positive by any means, are manageable nonetheless. All in all, it's amazing news, well worthy of celebration. And Walt's initial response is just that, in a scene that is extremely emotional and heartwarming. Yet, after he leaves the party to go to the bathroom, we see his hands shaking under the flowing water due to what initially seems like relief. And that may very well have been a factor here, but soon after we also see that this quiet moment to himself actually ends up dissolving his initial happiness, until all that is left behind is a strange, aimless sense of bewilderment and a resultant anger. And this outburst initially seems strange, but after the shock dissipates, it becomes clear that this is the most appropriate possible reaction for a man like Walter White. He has spent his entire life disrespected, underestimated, and emasculated, and having not lived in the way he really wanted to, he is understandably bitter and festers a deep resentment that fuels an ego. And so that pride plays a part here. Getting a death sentence enabled him to live like no tomorrow in a sense on the path to providing for his family in his eventual absence. It's liberated him and allowed him to express his need for control through his growing confidence in his skills and through how alive he felt navigating those avenues. But that death sentence being revoked renders so much of that seemingly irrelevant in this moment. He did all of this as a monument to his genius and because he thought it was required, but now it may not even be needed, or at least not nearly as much as before. So, what was it for? What is the significance to his actions now? There is no tangible meaning to these deeds if they're not as immensely required as he initially assumed, so that diminishes their importance. And his ego can't stomach that. He did what he did and slept like a baby at night, knowing with satisfaction that he'd be able to die in peace having provided for his family. But living? That throws everything into disarray. This was a short-term plan that has now turned into something much longer. How would he continue to lie about this? What would the end goal be? The main thing he lacked in his life before the diagnosis was control. And he finally got it and grabbed life by the horns to steer things in the way he wanted. Cancer liberated him in this way. But now what? Is he now just along for some ride, and will he slowly fade away? Is he trapped once again as a passenger without any say in how things turn out? It's a lot to take in. Although, as prominent as this sort of idea is in explaining his outburst, there is another aspect to this that is perhaps even more significant.
I have it coming. I deserve this.
These words from earlier in the episode tell us so much with so little, and I believe they're honest because he has no reason to bring this up or lie to Jesse here whilst facing a seemingly inevitable doom in the middle of the desert. The concept of a death even more premature than he thought is what he sees as his chickens coming to roost for the things he's done. It's clear that on some level, he is remorseful and he isn't proud of his actions. And as a result, the prospect of an impending end, whether it be due to his cancer or due to being stranded, is somewhat comforting because it allows him to go out in this blaze of glory without having to deal with the consequences. This moment shows that in the deepest depths of his soul, he knows that he has done tons of things wrong. Yet before these thoughts had surfaced, perhaps he had subconsciously thought himself capable of ignoring this, and maybe he had nearly convinced himself that he was justified in doing this since he would be dead soon anyway. But as the doctor points out, his remission means much more time, and that also means that he has to face the reality of his actions. And that reality is terrifying, so of course he lashes out. The reasons he could use to justify doing this have evaporated, and now all that he's left with are his sins and shame. These are things that you can't come back from, and his out is now gone. But there's one last thing to dissect here that we can extrapolate from this scene. Because dying in the short term would allow Walter to go out without having to potentially see himself change into something that, in this moment, he wouldn't be proud of. He started doing this for his family, but sticking around long enough might force him to face the idea that maybe his motives are shifting. Maybe he likes Breaking Bad, and maybe that's hard to come to terms with. That growing realization that perhaps he isn't doing this purely for selfless reasons. It's not a comfortable thing to come to grips with, and the prospect of death allowed him to ignore it. But now, it's staring him straight in the face. I interpret this moment to be a crossroads, where Mr. White sees the growing influence of Heisenberg, is tempted by it and finds pleasure in it, yet simultaneously knows that it isn't. realization that perhaps he isn't doing this purely for selfless reasons. It's not a comfortable thing to come to grips with, and the prospect of death allowed him to ignore it. But now it's staring him straight in the face. I interpret this moment to be a crossroads, where Mr. White sees the growing influence of Heisenberg, is tempted by it and finds pleasure in it, yet simultaneously knows that it isn't healthy, so looks at his death as a positive thing for giving him an escape route before things go too far. But now that escape route may well be gone, and nothing but challenges lie ahead. For all of these reasons and more, everything boils over, and Walt finds himself enraged. It's bizarre, it's visceral, and it's raw, and most of all, it's so very Walter White. And the way the dented dispenser now warps to reflect this twisted, bloody, monstrous self-image of Walt is absolutely perfect, leaving a haunting, foreboding tone in the air that hints at the devil he could become, and only proves to be confirmed as the narrative goes on from here. It is special, special storytelling, and it's one of the best moments in the show. As mentioned, this revelation is an intersection and a very important moment for the series and the main protagonist. Appropriately for this episode, it is a snapshot of who Walter is at this point and how he differs from who he was before, whilst foreshadowing who he will become. These complex feelings he has, what will he do with them? Where will they lead him? Now that he no longer has a distinct end goal and finishing line, where will he channel this ambition and his insatiable need for control in his life? All of these questions will get answered later, but 4 Days Out does a pristine job at posing them in such an ominous way in the first place, and for that reason, this is where Breaking Bad truly takes its first steps towards peak storytelling for me. Many thanks for watching.
It is
side contain and don't allow Allen to go out there by himself. Allen on 1st and 10 under heavy pressure. He throws, has his man. It's Foster, and he's into the end zone for the touchdown.
Fear.
Vegetables.
A coin toss.
That's a good answer.
growth, then decay, then transformation.
Arizona straight to the line. There's the snap to Murray. Murray looks left, pumps once, looking. A lot of time. Now he throws, and it's intercepted by the Lions. Picked off down the left sideline. Oruwariye picks up a block at the 30, 25, 20, Amani 10, 5, and he's spun out of bounds right there. I see you, 24. I see you.
Welcome back to the 20-Minute in the Huddle podcast. I am your host, Tim Twentyman, the senior writer for DetroitLions.com, and I am joined today by Brian Duker, who is the safeties coach for the Detroit Lions. You joined the team last year as a defensive assistant. Before that, you were with the Baltimore Ravens for 3 years, and you held a title of defensive analyst. And I got to start there, Brian. All right, so it's week 16. You guys are facing the Steelers on Sunday. What does John Harbaugh dump on your desk on a Monday as a defensive analyst? Just speak to me a little bit about that role and kind of what that job entails. For DetroitLions.com, and I am joined today by Brian Duker, who is the safeties coach for the Detroit Lions. You joined the team last year as a defensive assistant. Before that, you were with the Baltimore Ravens for 3 years, and you held a title of defensive analyst. And I got to start there, Brian. All right, so it's week 16. You guys are facing the Steelers on Sunday. What does John Harbaugh dump on your desk on a Monday as a defensive analyst? Just speak to me a little bit about that role and kind of what that job entails.
Absolutely. Shoot, on a Monday. All right, so Monday, so that I guess we're just going over the game before. So much of that job for me was really just helping our defense coordinator guy, Wink Martindale. It really just, in any way I could, I was kind of his right-hand man. So that entailed a whole bunch of things. So, Monday would be immediately game review, going over, doing a lot of stuff with Wink, grading the guys, having, but also a self-scout from us. Okay, what do we do? What was successful for us just from that previous game? Okay, and then as soon as we basically finished that, then it was immediately start spinning to the next opponent. Okay, so now getting ahead, breaking down, had certain areas responsible for, 2-minute, things like that, would help with, some different things. And so I had all my different areas of the game plan that I would kind of have to present and give reports to Wink and have those ready to go and then pass those on to Coach Harbaugh as well. That was early in the week. And then as we get going later in the week, now it's a lot of, spend time together. Wink and I spent a lot of time together putting the call sheet for the next opponent together. Okay. So consistently doing that. And then I was also in a helper with the defensive backs there. So whatever came up